breakups suck. That's not exactly a groundbreaking statement, but damn, when you're sitting on a curb outside your ex's apartment complex at 10:47 p.m., phone dead, keys in your hand, and your pride somewhere back on the kitchen floor, yeah, it really hits different. I didn't expect it to end like that, not with shouting or some dramatic scene. It was worse. Quiet, cold. Just a soft, I think we're done. Like we just finished watching a movie and now it was time for me to leave. My ex Tyler had always been a little emotionally reserved, but I never thought he'd look me in the eye and say it with that kind of distance. We dated for almost a year. Laughed together, slept together, met each other's friends, even talked about traveling next summer. Then suddenly, I wasn't even worth a goodbye hug. I'd ordered an Uber, but my phone died before it showed up. And since I wasn't in the mood to go knocking on his door again to ask for a charger or any more humiliation, I just sat on the curb and waited, hoping the driver would show anyway. That's when a car I recognized rolled up to the curb. A black Jeep Wrangler, slightly older model, with that familiar rumble and a dent on the back bumper from a snowboarding trip Tyler once mentioned. The window rolled down. "You okay?" I looked up and squinted. It was Richard, Tyler's dad, yeah, that Richard. 6'2", broad shoulders, salt and pepper stubble, always smelled like cologne and cedarwood. I'd seen him a dozen times at family BBQs and holidays. He had that kind of presence, you know the type, where everyone shuts up a little when he walks into a room. "Didn't think I'd find you here," he said, leaning over the console. "You look like hell." "Thanks," I muttered. "Appreciate that." He didn't smile, but his voice softened a bit. "Get in. I'll give you a ride." I hesitated. I mean, riding with your ex's dad after getting dumped by his son? It felt like a humiliation speed run. But it was cold, I was tired, and frankly, I had nowhere else to go. So I stood up, brushed dirt off my jeans, and got in. The car was warm, smelled like leather and coffee. He didn't say anything for the first few minutes, just drove. "You guys broke up?" he finally asked. "Yeah," I said, staring out the window. "Didn't see it coming." He made a quiet sound. Not quite a hum. Not quite a sigh. "Tyler's got his own issues." I glanced over. "You think I'm better off?" He didn't answer right away. Just flicked on his turn signal and pulled into a quiet side road. One of those tucked away residential ones lined with trees and two big houses. His house wasn't far. "I think," he said slowly, "you deserved better than how he ended it, and for the record, I never thought he deserved you in the first place." That made me turn. "Wait, what?" He shrugged, eyes still on the road. "Just being honest." That felt like a weird thing to say. Not bad weird, but weird enough that I wasn't sure how to respond. So I stayed quiet. We passed his house, though. That part one noticed. He didn't turn into the driveway. "Thought we were heading to your place?" I said cautiously. He shook his head. "Nah. Thought you might need a minute. Somewhere quiet." Before I could respond, he pulled down a private gravel road I'd never noticed before. The headlights lit up a narrow path between tall pine trees. At the end, a small cabin came into view. Modern, sleek, but clearly meant for solitude. "My place," he said, cutting the engine. "Hunting cabin. I come here sometimes to think." "You're bringing me to a remote cabin to think?" He looked over at me then, and something in his expression made my stomach twist, not in fear, in something else. "Not if you're uncomfortable," he said. "Voice even? You can say no." I didn't say no. And that was the moment things started to shift. The second I stepped out of the Jeep, the night air hit me. Crisp. Still. The kind of quiet you don't get in the city. No traffic, no neighbors yelling through walls, just pine needles crunching underfoot and the occasional creak of wood from the cabin in front of us. Richard moved ahead of me, unlocking the door and pushing it open. Warm light spilled out into the night, and I followed without a word. Still not sure why I'd agreed to come here, or what this even was. Inside, the place was nicer than I expected. Not rustic, modern, clean, but masculine. Exposed beams, dark wood floors, minimalist furniture that looked expensive without trying too hard. A stone fireplace flickered low in the corner. The air smelled like smoke and something faintly herbal. Maybe whatever soap he used in the shower. "Sit wherever," Richard said, tossing his keys on the counter. "I'll make us something warm." I dropped onto the couch, feeling weirdly small in the space. Not because it was huge, but because it was his. Everything here screamed, "This is who I am." No roommates, no clutter, no signs of anyone else ever sharing it. He returned with 2 mugs and handed me one. Tea. Not coffee, not whiskey, just hot, simple tea. It felt oddly thoughtful. "I'm guessing you haven't eaten," he said, settling into the chair across from me. "I didn't really have the appetite," I admitted. "You should eat, even if you don't want to. Heartbreak burns more energy than you think." I raised an eyebrow. "You sound like you've been through this," he gave a soft chuckle. "You don't get to 48 without a few bruises." That shut me up for a second. There was something in his tone, tired maybe, or honest in a way I wasn't used to. It made me want to ask more, dig deeper, but I was already walking a weird enough line just being here. He looked at me, really looked. "You doing okay?" I nodded too quickly. "Yeah, just kind of wrecked, I guess." "Tyler's loss?" I blinked. "You keep saying that like it's obvious," he shrugged. "Because it is. You're thoughtful, loyal. You give a damn. That's more than most people." I didn't know what to say to that. Compliments from Richard had never been part of the package. Usually he was just the cool, distant dad at the grill, cracking dry jokes and nodding quietly during family game night. But now he was looking at me like he saw something. Like he had seen it for a while. "You ever wonder," he said after a pause, "why I always asked about you, even when Tyler wasn't around?" My stomach flipped. "I thought you were just being polite," I said carefully. Richard's mouth pulled into a faint smirk. "I'm not polite by accident." There was silence after that. Not awkward. Heavy. Like something had been placed between us and neither of us wanted to be the first to unwrap it. He stood, walked over to the fireplace, and adjusted the logs with a metal poker. His back was to me, but his voice came steady. "I always thought Tyler didn't know what he had." "And you did?" I asked before I could stop myself. He turned then, slowly. His eyes met mine, and something passed between us I couldn't name, like a current running under the floorboards. "Yeah," he said simply. "I did." I didn't breathe or blink. I don't even think I moved. I just stared back at him, wondering if I was about to ruin everything, or start something I wouldn't be able to stop. He crossed the room and sat down beside me, not in his chair, but right beside me. Close. Our knees almost touched. "I didn't bring you here to make you uncomfortable," he said, his voice quieter now. "I brought you here because I thought maybe you needed to feel wanted." Something tightened in my chest. Not panic. Something warmer, deeper. I looked at him, at this man who had once intimidated the hell out of me, who now looked softer, almost nervous. "I don't know what this is," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded. "Me either." And then, slowly, like he was giving me every second to say no, he reached out and touched my hand. I didn't pull away. His hand was warm. That was the first thing I noticed, not hesitant or unsure, but firm in that way that said he meant it. It wasn't some casual touch. It wasn't a mistake I should have pulled back, should have said something, anything, to break the moment, to remind us both that this was wrong or weird or dangerous or maybe all three, but I didn't. Instead, I let this silence stretch. I let the warmth of his hand linger on mine, and I stared down at our fingers, motionless but connected, like that simple point of contact had cracked something open inside me I didn't even know I'd sealed off. "I don't want to make this more confusing for you," Richard said, his voice low. "Especially not tonight." "Too late," I murmured, my throat suddenly dry. He looked at me then, and I don't mean just turned his head. I mean looked, with this softness I hadn't seen from anyone in a long time. Maybe ever. Like he wasn't trying to figure me out or get something from me. Like he just wanted to see me. "You always seemed alone," he said, eyes still on mine. "Even when you were with him." That hit harder than I expected. I blinked. I didn't think anyone noticed. I noticed. The air felt thicker suddenly. The fire cracked beside us, casting soft shadows on his face. His features looked different in this light. Sharper, but calmer. That hard, controlled energy he usually carried was still there, but something else was underneath it. Something raw. I finally asked the question that had been sitting on my tongue since we pulled into the driveway. "Why'd you come pick me up, Richard?" He didn't flinch. "Because I didn't like the idea of you sitting out there alone, and I didn't trust him to check on you." "You still keep tabs on your son's ex?" "No," he said simply, "but I kept tabs on you." That silence returned. The kind that made every second stretch longer than it should. "You're not doing this just because I'm vulnerable, right?" I asked. "Because I don't want pity." "I don't pity you," he said firmly. "And no, this isn't about that. I didn't bring you here because you were broken. I brought you here because I've thought about this. And not just tonight." I let that sink in. "How long?" He took a breath, long and controlled. "Since last Christmas. When you came to the house with that stupid sweater and made everyone laugh. Tyler didn't even notice. But I did. I noticed you." I sat back, processing. I remembered that night. Tyler had been cold the whole evening, buried in his phone while I tried to play nice with his family. Richard had offered me a drink, made a few sarcastic comments about Hallmark movies, and sat across from me at the fireplace while everyone else wandered off. Now it made sense. The way he had stayed in the room longer than necessary, asked questions that felt too curious for a father-in-law figure. And now, here we were. He still hadn't let go of my hand. "I don't know what I'm doing," I admitted. "I just got out of something, and now this." "I'm not asking you for anything," he said. "I just want you to be here. That's it. Just be here." Something about the way he said that, the simplicity of it, disarmed me. There was no pressure, no agenda, just space. And God, I didn't realize how badly I needed space like that. He let go of my hand and stood. For a second, I thought he was about to end it, tell me to go to the guest room, or that he'd overstepped. But instead, he walked over to the shelf by the fireplace and pulled out a folded blanket, then tossed it to me. "You can crash on the couch," he said, voice back to that casual tone. "Bathroom's down the hall. There's spare clothes in the dresser if you want something more comfortable." I looked at the blanket, then at him. "You're not gonna make it weird?" He smiled, just a little. "Only if you do." Fair enough. I didn't sleep much that night, not because I was uncomfortable. The opposite, actually. It had been a long time since I felt that safe in someone else's space, and the weirdest part? I didn't dream about Tyler once. I woke up to the smell of bacon. For a moment, I forgot where I was. The sunlight coming in through the tall windows was too clean, too still. No honking cars, no neighbor's dog barking, no Tyler's crappy fan buzzing beside my bed, just the soft crackle of something frying and the quiet clink of a plate being set down. I sat up, blanket slipping off me. My clothes from the night before were wrinkled, my hair probably a mess, but I didn't care. For the first time in a long while, I'd slept deeply. No anxiety, no checking my phone, no lying awake wondering what I did wrong. I stepped into the kitchen, rubbing the back of my neck. Richard stood at the stove in a black t-shirt and gray joggers, barefoot, looking every bit like a man completely at ease in his own skin. "Morning," he said without turning. "Hey," I replied, voice still a little rough. "Coffee's in the pot. Mugs are in the cabinet to your left." I poured a cup and took a sip. Strong, not sweet. The kind of coffee that wakes you up on a cold morning in the middle of nowhere. "You didn't have to cook," I said. "Didn't have to pick you up either," he replied, flipping the bacon. "Touché." He slid a plate toward me with scrambled eggs, toast, and the bacon I'd smelled earlier. It wasn't anything fancy, but it felt weirdly intimate. More intimate than anything Tyler had ever done for me, now that I thought about it. We ate mostly in silence, but it wasn't awkward. just comfortable. Afterward, I helped him rinse the dishes, the two of us moving around each other in that easy rhythm that usually only comes from years of knowing someone. It threw me a little how normal it all felt. "So," I said, drying off a plate, "what now?" He leaned against the counter, drying his hands. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I don't know. This feels like something, but it also feels like nothing. Like I dreamed it." "You didn't," he said simply. "That should have settled it, but I couldn't help pushing. I don't want to be some midlife crisis for you," I said. "Or some rebound from my rebound." He tilted his head, eyes fixed on me in that way that made me feel stripped bare. "That's not what this is." "Then what is it?" he thought for a moment. "It's a moment, one I've been thinking about for a long time, one I didn't think I'd ever get." There was something in his honesty that made my chest ache a little. I was so used to people dodging feelings, skirting around things, especially guys, especially Tyler. But here was Richard, just saying it. "I'm not sure what I want," I said. "That's the truth." "I know," he replied, "and I don't want to rush into something messy. I don't do messy." I let out a breath and leaned against the counter across from him. We were quiet again, just looking at each other. And then, without thinking, I asked, "Why me?" He didn't hesitate. "Because you listen. Because you care about people, even when they don't deserve it. Because you've got that look in your eyes like you're waiting for someone to choose you, and no one ever does." I blinked. That one hit. "You really think no one's ever chosen me?" "I think no one's earned you," he said. I didn't respond to that. I didn't know how. My throat felt tight, and for some reason, I suddenly wanted to go outside, like the air inside had gotten too thick. "I'm gonna take a walk," I said. He nodded. "There's a trail behind the cabin. It loops back around in about 20 minutes. I stepped outside into the cool morning, letting the door swing shut behind me. But the second I started walking, I knew. This wasn't just a walk. I was falling into something, and I wasn't sure I could stop. The trail behind the cabin was quiet. Just pine needles underfoot, birds rustling somewhere overhead, and the occasional creak of a tree shifting in the breeze. I walked with no real destination, hoping the fresh air would help untangle the mess of thoughts spinning in my head. It didn't, because no matter how many times I tried to redirect my thoughts, they kept circling back to Richard, to the way he looked at me across the table, to the way he touched my hand, to the things he said, calm, direct, no games. I'd never had that before. Tyler sure as hell didn't operate like that. Everything with him had been cautious, always behind some invisible wall I never figured out how to climb. With Richard, there was no wall, just this steady presence. It wasn't that he didn't have baggage. He probably had more than I could guess, but he didn't hide behind it. And maybe that was what scared me the most. By the time I looped back to the cabin, the sun had moved higher in the sky. It was going to be a hot day. I kicked off my shoes on the porch and stepped inside, unsure of what version of him I'd be walking back into. Would he have pulled back? Regretted something? Pretended like none of it had happened? But Richard was exactly the same. He was on the couch, reading. A pair of glasses rested low on his nose, something I'd never seen before. It made him look softer, wiser, hotter somehow, which was annoying because I was trying very hard not to think about him like that. "Hey," he said without looking up. "Hey, you good?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah, just needed to clear my head." "Did it work?" I thought about it. "Nope." He smirked. "Didn't think so." I hesitated for a second, then walked over to the armchair and sank into it. We sat like that for a while. Him reading, me pretending not to stare. I couldn't help it. The way his shirt clung to his chest, the way his forearms looked resting on the open book, the way his jaw tensed slightly as he read. "You keep doing that," he said suddenly, not looking up. "Doing what?" "Staring, then looking away like you weren't." I rolled my eyes, embarrassed. "Sorry." "Don't be," he said, finally closing the book and setting it aside. "Just Don't act like this doesn't mean something. I'm not acting, I said, my voice quieter now. I just don't know what to do with it. You don't have to do anything. But you want something, I said, right? You didn't bring me out here for nothing. He stood then, slowly, walking to the middle of the room. Not too close, just enough. I brought you out here because I didn't want you to be alone, he said. And yeah, maybe because I needed to see for myself if what I'd been feeling was real. But I'm not gonna push. This only works if you want it too. That word, want, hung in the air between us. And the truth was, I did want. That much was becoming obvious. I stood too, nervous energy buzzing through my limbs. I'm scared, I admitted. I don't even know what this is, or how it's supposed to work, or what it even means if you what? I took a step closer. If I want this too. Now we were inches apart. I could smell him. Clean soap, a hint of cedar, and something faintly like mint. He wasn't touching me, but I could feel the heat coming off him. You don't need to have it all figured out right now, he said, voice low. You just need to be honest. I swallowed. Okay, so here's honesty. I haven't stopped thinking about last night, about your hand on mine, about how calm I felt just sitting next to you. His eyes searched mine, quiet and patient. And, he asked, and? I took a breath. If you kissed me right now, I don't think I'd stop you. He didn't move. Not right away. Then he reached up, slow and measured, and gently cupped the side of my face. Tell me to stop, he said, his thumb brushing lightly along my jaw. I didn't. So he kissed me. And everything else. Tyler, the breakup, the confusion, the fear, just fell away. The kiss was different. Not rushed, not messy, not like something pulled out of desperation or drunken impulse. It was slow, deliberate, like he was trying to say something without words. And somehow, I understood every syllable of it. When he pulled back, he didn't step away. His forehead rested lightly against mine, and for a moment, we just breathed. The kind of breath you let out when you've been holding it for way too long. You okay? He asked softly. I nodded. Yeah. I trailed off, searching for something to say that didn't sound stupid or overly romantic or terrified. It's a lot, he said, as if reading my mind. I know. No, I mean, yes it is, but that's not what I was gonna say. I exhaled. It's just, I didn't expect to feel this kind of calm. I thought I'd be freaking out. He pulled back enough to meet my eyes. That's how you know it's real. His hand was still resting gently on my neck, thumb idly moving across the edge of my jaw. It wasn't sexual. Not yet. It was more grounding, like he was keeping me in this moment. Then he let go, stepping back, giving me space. I should probably say something very adult and responsible now, he said with a dry smile. Like what? Like how this is complicated, or how it might be a terrible idea, that we should maybe cool off and think it over for a few days. I half laughed. You gonna say that? He looked at me for a second, then shook his head. No, he said, not yet. We ended up outside on the porch, both of us with mugs in hand, this time with tea again, which felt weirdly symbolic. Like we were intentionally slowing down the energy, not rushing the tension we just crossed into. I don't think I've ever seen you like this, I said, watching him as he leaned on the porch railing, the wind tugging at the hem of his shirt. Like what? Open, chill, less dad-like. He smirked. Trust me, this is still very dad-like. This is just the version of me that doesn't show up at cookouts or when Tyler's around. Why is that? He sipped his tea. Because most of the time, people don't want the whole version of you. They just want the part that's easiest to manage. The version that fits their expectations. I nodded slowly. Yeah. I get that. He glanced at me. I think you've been doing that too. With him. With a lot of people. I didn't respond. He wasn't wrong. And now? I asked. What version of me are you seeing right now? His gaze didn't flinch, the one who finally let go of pretending. It hit harder than it should have. Not because he was being dramatic, but because he was right. For the past year, I'd been holding back pieces of myself to keep someone else comfortable. Laughing at the right times, avoiding hard conversations, being polite even when I was slowly falling apart. But here, in the middle of nowhere with a man I shouldn't be this drawn to, I felt more myself than I had in a long, long time. We didn't say much after that, just watched the sun start to dip behind the trees, the sky slowly shifting to orange and gold. I'll drive you home in the morning, he said eventually. Yeah, I replied. That's probably smart. But, he added, turning to face me, I don't want this to be a one-time thing. I want to see where this goes. As slow as you want. As careful as you need. But not if you're going to disappear and pretend it didn't happen. I looked at him, this man who should have been off limits, who I never expected to see me the way he did, and I felt the fear and the guilt swirl in my chest, but I also felt something else. Hope. I'm not going to disappear, I said quietly. Not if you don't want me to. I don't. That night, we didn't kiss again. We didn't even touch. But when I lay in the guest bed, listening to the quiet creak of the old cabin settling into darkness, I heard the soft footsteps of Richard walking down the hall and pausing outside my door. He didn't knock, didn't say anything, but somehow I knew he was just standing there for a second. Maybe to check on me, maybe to make sure I really stayed. Either way, I did. Morning came quietly. I was already awake when the sun crept in through the thin curtains. Not anxious, just awake. My body felt rested, but my mind had been slowly pacing since dawn. I kept going over every moment from the day before, wondering if I'd romanticized it all, if maybe I'd misread something that only existed in my head. But then I heard footsteps again, soft, deliberate, not pacing, just moving with the kind of calm intention that had started to define Richard. He knocked this time, lightly. Yeah? I called, my voice still rough from sleep. The door creaked open just enough for him to peek in. His hair was tousled, shirt rumpled, coffee mug in hand. Didn't want to scare you, he said. Coffee's ready. I sat up and nodded. I'll be out in a sec. When I joined him in the kitchen, the smell of fresh coffee hit me before anything else. He handed me a mug, and we stood there for a while, leaning against opposite counters like some unspoken rule said we couldn't sit just yet. So, I said finally, what happens now? He didn't answer right away. Just took a sip of his drink, eyes fixed on the window like he was reading the trees. I meant what I said last night, he replied. I don't want this to be a one-time thing. You know this could get messy, I said carefully. Everything worth doing usually is. It wasn't exactly a poetic answer, but coming from Richard, it felt solid, practical, real. I don't know how to explain this to anyone, I said. Least of all, Tyler. You don't have to explain it to him, Richard replied. Tone, even. You only owe it to yourself to be honest. That's easy for you to say. You're not the one who dated his son. No, he said, but I am the one who watched his son treat you like you didn't matter. And I hated it. He took a slow step closer, watching my face the whole time. You don't have to make a decision right now, he said. But don't pretend this didn't happen. Don't go back and act like none of it was real. I nodded slowly. It was real. The silence between us held something heavier now. Not tension, but possibility. After breakfast, we started packing up. It was a quiet routine. Dishes, wiping counters, locking windows, and it all felt weirdly domestic. Comfortable in a way I wasn't ready to admit I liked. When we got in the Jeep, I expected the weight of the return to hit me, but it didn't. Not exactly. Maybe because something in me had already shifted. The drive back was quiet, but not heavy. Just peaceful. We didn't talk much until we reached my place. He parked across the street, engine idling. I didn't move right away. "Do you want to come in?" I asked, voice careful. Richard looked at me for a long second. "Not yet," he said. "I think if I come in, we won't stop. And I want to make sure you're not just doing this because you're lonely." My throat tightened at that. Because he was right. Not about me being lonely, but about me needing to be sure that this wasn't just a reaction. That I wanted him, not just comfort. "That's fair," I said. He nodded, then reached over and rested his hand lightly on my knee. "But I do want to see you again. Soon." "You will," I said quietly. "I want that too." He gave my knee a gentle squeeze, then pulled his hand back and looked toward the road. "Call me later," he said, and with that, I got out. He didn't peel off. Just waited until I reached my door, watched me go inside. I stood in the entryway of my apartment, staring at the door like something huge had just happened. Because it had. Not dramatic, not loud, but real. And when I finally turned around and walked to my room, I found myself smiling like an idiot. I knew this wasn't over, not even close. The first text came later that night. "Richard, just checking in. You good?" I stared at the screen for a while, debating how to respond. Not because I didn't want to, but because it suddenly felt real in a way it hadn't before. This wasn't some surreal weekend escape anymore. This was the next part, the what now part. I typed, "Me. Yeah, been thinking about a lot of things, but I'm okay, really." A minute passed. "Richard. Thinking good things or bad things? Me. Both. But mostly good. Richard. Let me know when you want to talk. Or see each other. I'm not going anywhere." That part stuck with me. I'm not going anywhere. It had been a long time since someone said that to me, and actually meant it. Over the next week, we texted more. Nothing overly flirty or dramatic. Just steady check-ins, jokes, thoughtful questions. It was normal, which somehow made it even more intimate. We didn't tell anyone. Not yet. I needed time. And to his credit, Richard gave it to me. Tyler called once. I let it go to voicemail. He didn't leave a message. That silence told me everything I needed to know about how that chapter was supposed to end. When I finally saw Richard again, it wasn't at a cabin or in the middle of the night. It was a quiet Tuesday evening. He picked me up and took me to a hole-in-the-wall pizza place I'd never heard of. The kind of spot that didn't try to impress you, just served good food and left you alone. We sat in the booth by the window. He wore that same black t-shirt, and I tried not to stare too hard at how well it fit. "Still think this is a terrible idea?" I asked between bites. He sipped his drink and raised an eyebrow. "Definitely," I smirked. "Still want to do it anyway?" He leaned in slightly. "Absolutely." We didn't kiss that night. Not in the car, not outside my building, but when he hugged me, it lingered. His hand at the small of my back. His chin against my shoulder for half a second too long. It was better than any kiss. It was intentional. Weeks turned into a rhythm. Texts. Quiet dinners. Hikes. Late night phone calls. Never too much. Never too fast. I told one close friend. He thought I was joking at first. "You mean your ex's dad?" He'd said, eyes wide. "Like his dad?" I nodded, waiting for the blowback. But after a pause, he just shrugged. "Okay. Is he good to you?" "Yeah. Better than anyone's ever been." "Then screw it. Be happy." Eventually, I knew I'd have to tell Tyler. Or maybe he'd find out. But that didn't scare me as much anymore. Because this thing with Richard, it wasn't some rebellion or scandal or mistake. It was something that made me feel chosen. Seen. We were at his place one night, his actual house this time, not the cabin. He made pasta. I picked the music. Somewhere between chopping garlic and uncorking wine, I found myself watching him, really watching him. And it hit me. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't just some aftermath of a bad breakup. This was the beginning of something real. After dinner, we sat on the couch, legs tangled under a blanket, his fingers resting lightly on mine. He glanced over and asked, "What?" I smiled. "Nothing." He raised an eyebrow. "You're looking at me like you've got something on your mind." I shrugged, leaning my head against his shoulder. "I'm just glad I got in that car." He didn't say anything at first, just exhaled, slow and warm. Then he kissed the side of my head and whispered, "Me too."